Hi there, this is Ranjit, and in this video of Weekly Talks, I want to take up one topic that I was planning to take up this topic from a long time. That is end user experience versus what do you say, the technical specs. And I noticed that a lot of young users fight about the specs, saying, yeah, this device is a lot better than X device because this one has a lot better specs. But I think so you should actually concentrate on the end user experience. That is the most important thing. If the specs are really high but the performance is poor of a device, what the hell would you do with the specs? And by the way, I'm recording this footage with the LG G5 and the audio was from the internal microphone. I'll just mount it over tripod stand, and I'm going to use this Rode microphone for better audio.
So okay, I have said this, and the audio is via this Rode microphone. I hope it's better. It's a little bit windy. And now getting back to the topic about specs versus the end user experience. And as I was saying, the end user experience is really important because end of the day, it's the experience with the device that counts, not the specs. If the specs are high but still the device is not optimized and you have a laggy experience or something, what's the use of the spec? And we have seen this a lot with actually Android phones. Lately, the Android manufacturers are addressing this issue. That's the reason, I guess, we as geeks and stuff love the Nexus devices, because they are pure Android devices. They don't have the bloatware and stuff that pulls down the performance. And I feel that way.
That's the reason many people love iOS and the iPhones, because the hardware is made by Apple and the software is also totally optimized for that device. Even though iPhones have just dual core processors, you can see the performance is really good and overall end user experience is really good. So I feel you guys shouldn't to fight. I see this in a lot of YouTube comments of people fighting about
naming each other. How can you say this is better, that is better, this one is having a better processor, whatnot. For example, I've seen that with a lot of devices lately. Let me give you a few examples. For example, the Lenovo Vibe X3 had the 21 megapixel Sony sensor. On paper, it's really good sensor. But what happened in reality? The reality was that the camera performance is strictly very poor, and in fact I would say many of the 13 megapixel cameras actually will beat it out. For example, the Moto G5 Plus Moto G4 Plus also beats the camera performance if we compare with the Vibe X3. So again, it's the end user experience and the end output that really matters. For example, just 2 days ago somebody was arguing me on Twitter. For example, they told me to compare the Nexus 6P with the Moto G4 Plus. And I told, dude, it does not make any sense to compare those devices. The Nexus 6P is just better. So that user said that the DxO Mark, that's a benchmark for sort of camera, is higher for the Moto G4 Plus. But I told you, but I have both the devices, and Nexus 6P just has a better camera. In fact, the front-facing camera on the Moto G4 Plus is sort of pathetic, and also for video, the video quality is not good. So just looking at the benchmark figures, and if you decide the performance of the device based on that, is not a good idea in my opinion. And I test a lot of devices and I see that a lot. That is one of the main reasons, if you guys notice, I have almost stopped posting benchmark scores because it simply does not make any sense. I've seen devices that get very high scores on Antutu perform very bad in real world conditions. So that's one of the reasons I have stopped doing benchmarks. And in fact, Antutu is actually owned by a mobile OEM, big mobile OEM. I won't reveal the details, but yeah, so you can just figure out the results.
Also, another example that I had was with, again, for camera, I get this a lot. For example, between the Redmi Note 3, on paper, again, the Redmi Note 3 has a 16 megapixel rear-facing camera. But all of you guys know the performance of that camera, especially in, artificial lighting and indoor lighting, is simply not that great. Though it has a 16 megapixel camera. And in fact, I would say 13 megapixel cameras like on the ZUK Z1, or even yesterday that I unboxed the Nextbit Robin, those have 13 megapixel camera and they do perform a lot better.
So again, by just looking at the specs, and if you decide about the device, it's like sort of shooting yourself. And if you just recommend a device, let's say to your co-workers or your cousins or whatever, just based on the specs and the end user experience is not that great, then I feel it's a very bad thing that you're recommending devices. And I see this actually with a lot of youngsters recommending devices to their other people, cousins or elders, in fact, just looking at the specs and recommending the devices and not looking at the end user experience. So actually the end user experience is really important, and again, that is one of the reasons that I guess we as geeks love the Nexus devices, because it's the pure Android experience. Let's take the example of Samsung, for example. It's known that Samsung TouchWiz UI was pretty laggy even on high-end devices. Just from last year, I think so, from Galaxy S6, they have really toned it down, and now it does not lag. So that is one thing that I have noticed. Generally, that is one of the reasons last year some people argued with me when I said that the Nexus 6P was the best device that I have tested last year in 2015. And many people argued with me, why didn't you vote for the Note 5? I actually owned both the devices. I actually purchased both the devices and I've used them. And yes, the Note 5 has a better quality screen and also that S Pen. And so in those two areas, the Note 5 actually goes ahead in comparison to the Nexus 6P. But in other aspects, the Nexus 6P simply destroys the Note 5. For example, in camera performance, the Nexus 6P was better. In battery life, the Nexus 6P was better. And overall usage experience, it was a much more snappy device. And let's not even talk about the RAM management issues that the Note 5 had. Even though it had 4 gigabytes of RAM, the Nexus 6P with 3 gigabytes of RAM was a far better device. So that is one thing that you have to look at, the end user experience. That is very important. And also let me talk about one more thing that is called as processor binning. Many people just see that this XYZ handset has that latest processor, for example, the Snapdragon 820 chipset. For example, the Mi 5 that is sold in India has the Snapdragon 820 chipset, which is clocked at 1.8 gigahertz if I recall. But if you see my review with the Xiaomi Mi 5, it was sort of a mixed experience, and the battery life was not that great. But again, the same processor on the LG G5 did perform way better. And the thing is that, yes, technically it's the Snapdragon 820 chipset, but the processor that is used on the LG G5 is simply a better one. It's known as processor binning, guys. If you have been in the PC industry, you'll know that not all processors are equal. Maybe even if they are of the same family. So if a lower processor is there, it will be clocked at a lower frequency, and also the efficiency of that processor is not that great. So though the LG G5 and the Mi 5 both have actually the Snapdragon 820 chipset, I'm getting far better performance on the LG G5, and especially in terms of battery life, I would say. The battery life that I was getting on the Mi 5, especially on mobile data, was sort of pathetic. On Wi-Fi, I was getting very good battery life on the Mi 5, almost about 5 hours of screen on time. But when I was exclusively using it on mobile data, it was simply not that optimized. And yeah, the Mi UI is sort of bloaty. You guys don't understand that. It is pretty bloaty. And I was getting just about 2.5 hours of screen on time. But with the LG G5, I'm testing this LG G5, been using it for now 9 days with my primary SIM. And on Wi-Fi, I could get almost about 5 hours, 20 minutes of screen on time. But when I exclusively used it, even on mobile data here in Hyderabad on Airtel 4G with the same SIM that I used on the Mi 5, I was getting a screen on time of about 4.5 hours. So it's the optimization, the processor actually used the binning. Again, as I've told you, not all processors are the same. So again, just don't go about the specs, concentrate a lot more on the end user experience. That is what really counts. I hope this, and the classic example is iPhone. The iPhones have just a dual core processor, but the hardware and the software is so well optimized, hence they work really well. And that's one of the reasons, I guess, we as geeks have that special loving to Nexus devices, because they are stock Android and you don't have that junk extra or the bloatware added to those devices. So again, concentrate on the end user experience rather than the specs. I hope this video was helpful. I've also posted other videos on Weekly Talks. I'll have the link in the show notes. So guys, thanks for watching this video. This is Ranjit and I hope to see you in my next video.